I never imagined one careless remark could fracture the steady rhythm of a marriage. But then again, I'd never seen that look in Ethan's eyes before that night. The kind that said something deep inside him had shifted, quietly but permanently. It began at a barbecue. The kind we'd hosted countless times before. Our backyard buzzed with laughter, the scent of grilled steak, and Ethan's college friends swapping old memories like poker chips. One of them, Ryan, had clearly been hitting the gym. Everyone noticed. He was tall, built, the sort of man who looked like he'd stepped out of a fitness magazine. We were joking about getting older, about how metabolism turns traitor past 30, when I, without thinking, without intent, said, "Well, not everyone's suffering. Look at Ryan. He's getting bigger every time I see him." The table burst into laughter. Even Ryan chuckled. But Ethan didn't. His hand paused halfway to his beer, his face unreadable. I thought maybe he hadn't heard me, or maybe he was lost in thought. I moved on, but his silence lingered through the night like a storm waiting for thunder. Later, after everyone had left and the smoke had thinned, he asked, "You think he's bigger?" His voice wasn't sharp, it was calm.
Too calm.
I laughed it off nervously. "Ethan, it was just a joke." Everyone was laughing. "Yeah," he said quietly. Everyone was.
He didn't argue.
Didn't accuse. Just went upstairs, showered, and came back wordless. I tried to ease the tension, but something in the air had shifted. It felt like I was standing on thin ice, afraid to move. The next morning, he was gone before I woke. Coffee brewed. Dishes washed. Every detail in place. Ethan had always been a man of order, but that morning, order felt like distance. The days that followed were careful. He wasn't cold, just deliberate. Every response seemed measured, rehearsed. When I asked what was wrong, he'd give a small smile and say, "Nothing at all." It was the "at all" that hollowed me. A week later, I found him at the dining table, a glass of untouched whiskey before him. He motioned for me to sit. My stomach nodded. "I've been thinking about that joke," he said finally. "Ethan, please, it was stupid. I didn't mean—" "I know you didn't mean it," he said gently. "That's the problem." I frowned. "What do you mean?" He looked up, tired but steady. "You didn't even think it might sting. That it might humiliate me. You didn't notice." I stopped laughing. "I just wanted to make everyone laugh," I whispered. "Right," he said. "And in that moment, you made me the punchline." I wanted to defend myself, to say he was overreacting, but his tone stopped me. He wasn't angry. He was wounded in a place I couldn't reach. "I've never compared you to anyone," he said, "because I know how easily small things can make someone feel small." My throat tightened. "Ethan, I didn't mean it like that." "I know," he said softly. "That's what makes it worse." Silence filled the room, heavy and fragile. My mind replayed every offhand comment I'd ever made, every joke I'd tossed carelessly into the air. Maybe his quiet all these years hadn't been peace. It had been patience. Finally, he said, "I need space. I'll stay with my brother for a while." "Ethan, please don't." I breathed. He stood, exhaled slowly. "This isn't punishment. I just need to feel like myself again." That night, he left with only a duffel bag. And for the first time in our marriage, the house didn't feel empty. It felt ashamed. The next few days felt like waking in someone else's life. His absence was everywhere, his toothbrush gone, his jacket missing from the hook, the silence too purposeful to be comforting. And every night, I replayed that moment again and again, trying to believe it was just a misunderstanding, that he'd cool off and come home. But as the days stretched into a week, the weight of my words began to change form. It wasn't just about what I'd said anymore. It was about what it revealed. That somewhere along the way, I'd stopped being gentle with him.
He didn't call, didn't text.
But I saw him online, small glimpses of a life still moving forward. A cup of coffee on his brother's porch. A lake catching the sunrise. Nothing meant for me, yet everything felt like it was. One night, I finally drove to his brother's house. I sat in the car for 20 minutes. Before I found the courage to knock, Ethan opened the door, surprised but steady. wearing that old gray t-shirt I'd bought him years ago. "Hey," I said softly. He nodded once. "Hey, can we talk?" He hesitated, then stepped aside. The living room smelled of cedar and whiskey. A half-finished puzzle sat on the coffee table. His way of thinking things through. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry," I began. "Not the kind that expects forgiveness. Just the kind that means I finally understand." He said nothing, waiting. "When I joked about Ryan," I continued, "I thought it was harmless. But it wasn't about the joke, it was about respect. You've never made me feel small. And I made you feel replaceable. Even for a second." His eyes softened for the first time in days. "It wasn't about Ryan," he said quietly. "It was about trust. About knowing the one who's supposed to protect you won't be the one to embarrass you." Tears stung my eyes. "I didn't realize I did that." "That's what scares me," he said. "That you didn't realize." Silence stretched between us, thick with everything we hadn't said. The distance wasn't physical anymore. It lived in the space between our breaths. Finally, he said, "You used to make me feel like I was enough. Like I didn't have to prove anything to be loved." Somewhere along the way, that stopped. His words cut deep, not because they were harsh, but because they were true. I had been careless with the only person who'd always treated me with care. "I want to fix this," I whispered. He nodded slowly. "I believe you, but fixing isn't the same as forgetting." There was finality in his voice. Not anger, just acceptance. He walked me to the door, and for a moment I thought he might ask me to stay. Instead, he said, "Take care of yourself, Anna." He hadn't used my name like that in years. It used to sound warm. Now it sounded like a goodbye dressed as grace. I drove home in silence, the road stretching endlessly ahead. The house looked smaller when I pulled in. I went to bed without turning on the lights. Days blurred into weeks. We texted now and then, polite, distant, tired. He said he wasn't angry, just thinking. Then one morning, I found an envelope on the porch. Inside, a note in his careful handwriting. "Some words can't be taken back, but they can teach you what not to lose again. I wish you peace, even if it's not with me." No signature. Just that. I sat on the steps, the morning air cold against my skin, the weight of regret settling in, not fading but maturing, because the truth was cruel and simple. I had been loved by a man who saw me completely, and in one careless moment, I made him feel invisible. People say love fades slowly, like a candle burning down, but sometimes it goes dark all at once, snuffed out by a single joke. That wasn't funny to the one who mattered most. That night, in the dim glow of our empty home, I laughed again, not out of humor, but because the irony cut too deep. I joked that another man was bigger. But in the end, Ethan's silence proved who the real grown-up in our marriage had been all along.